X-Men. Get it!
Hey everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Battle of the Atom. This is your weekly X-Men podcast where we rank every story from A to Z.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Zack. Adam, how are you doing this fine day?
Well, you know, I just got back from New York Comic-Con, whining and dining with the superstars. And
that was you joke about that. I've seen pictures of you from New York Comic-Con very literally whining and dining with superstars.
All right, there was no dining. I did not mention this on the con special last week, but yes, I did mention that Jerry Duggan lost his voice at his own book release party, but I did not mention that I was at that book release party and having beers with the likes of like John Hickman and Rod Reese and etc.
Look at name dropping boy over here. Little Mr. New York Metropolitan over here, rubbing elbows with all these bigwigs who refuse to do interviews and don't want to talk about X-Men for the rest of their lives. I don't know if John said that.
We did not talk about X-Men. We had some beers and talked about the con and things going on in the world. And it was nice. You know, these are real people. And if you take them away from a comic book convention and don't bother them too much about comic books, they're just very friendly, normal folks. So
did you bother him about how Clemson's doing this year?
No, we did not get into sports. That didn't seem like it was part of I don't know.
Well, listen, number 5 Clemson. I bet Johnny Hicks has got a lot of thoughts about Clemson.
I'm sure he does. So I did make a mistake last week in telling folks that we're going to be talking about Halloween this week. We are not talking about Halloween. That's next week. This week we are talking about...
And now the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. My friend, I'll say it clear, I'll state my case, of which I'm certain.
Is this the Sid Vicious
I've
version?
lived a life that's full. I've traveled each and every highway.
Are you going to finish?
And more, much more than this. I did it my way.
Beautiful, beautiful. Bravo. My goodness.
That's not a very good song. I don't know why we let Frank Sinatra do that.
Are you trying to sing the Frank Sinatra version, or are you trying to sing the cover version? Because you were doing a pretty good impression of the Sid Vicious version.
I don't know what I was doing there.
It was beautiful, whatever it was you
were
trying to do.
Everyone loves it so much when we do bits, Adam. We never get any feedback about them. I have to assume it's fully positive and everyone loves it, especially my wife, who from 3 rooms away just yelled, "What are you doing?"
Well, I had the same reaction reading the books that we're talking about this week and shouting out loud in my home, what are you doing to the comic book as I was reading it. So what are we reading, and who cursed us with this?
Oh, yeah. We haven't actually said that. We're reading all of the X-Men : the end. This comes to us from Patreon supporter Noah Zedman. If you want to be like Noah, you can go on over to patreon.com/comicsxf, reach deep down into your hearts and your pocketbooks, and toss a couple coins into our coffers. We'll do an episode based around whatever really bad Blake Claremont stuff you want us to cover. Adam and I have had very different reactions to this book. Adam's is of, I don't want to speak for him, but it feels like it's out of a place of anger.
We'll get into it, but I think we're going to have a different... See, I make the mistake sometimes of as I'm reading these things, sharing my opinion online. And I don't know if it's so much a mistake as
It
much
is.
as um, it allows me to sort of vent as I'm going, and I have realized that there is a lot of opinions about these books, um, and some of them are more towards my side, which is the hatred side. But you have also indicated that you enjoyed some of this, which I'm confused about. So, and there were people out there who definitely fell on that side. So I I hate
Well,
it when we use the word divisive, but I think these books are divisive.
so I want to take I love what you just said. I want to take it in a couple of different bites.
Yes.
Here's the first bite here.
Okay.
Yes, you absolutely made a mistake. Never talk about X-Men with anyone on the internet except for your good friend. That's how I live now, Adam, and I'm happier than I've ever been.
Unfortunately, that is part of my Twitter brand, so
Yeah,
difficult to
it
walk
was
away from that.
Adam, it was part of mine too. And do you know what I realized? That Twitter brand wasn't making me any money, and it
Mm,
was negatively impacting my mental health.
mm.
And maybe you don't need to have the opinions of 17,000 people yelling at you all at once.
Oh, I didn't think anybody was yelling at me, but you're right. It can
Just
be
maybe not at you, yelling in general. That's too much yelling. The human brain was not made
for
for
social
all
media.
of this. The second thing you said, that these books are divisive.
Yeah.
So you and me have talked recently. I don't necessarily. I want to start this episode out because we're gonna get into this. I'm not necessarily saying these books are good.
Oh,
I
good.
am
I'm glad we're
saying
starting there.
that I enjoyed myself reading these far more than you did because I am interested in these books. If someone is going to say that actually X-Men The End is an underrated masterpiece, they are either someone with bad taste or me doing a bit. It's going to be one of the two.
I am so glad that you're telling me this because I was really worried that I was going to be coming in today and you were going to be telling me about this magnificent opus of Christopher Claremont, and I was going to have to just really do a wellness check.
No, Adam, I was excited because my favorite episodes of this podcast are the ones where one of us is fighting that a story deserves to be in the 500s and not the 600s. Because we're saying we all agree that this is bad, but
All right.
how bad is it? And that is how I would describe X-Men The End. Or I'm sorry, we've done this a few times and we have to get it right. We're covering all of X-Men The End today. So we are covering
Right.
Stanley Presents X:*X-Men: The End: Book 1: Dreamers and Demons. Stanley Presents X-Men: The End: Book 2: Heroes and Martyrs. And Stanley Presents X-Men: The End: Book 3: Men and X-Men.
Each a 6-issue miniseries coming out in between 2004 and 2006, written by Chris Claremont and illustrated entirely by Sean Chen, with inks by Sandu Floria and colors by Avalon's Ian Hannon, letters by Dave Sharp. So we're gonna rank each one of these separately, but I do
Because
think
I do think each 6-issue story is its own arc. I do think that there is a distinct beginning, middle, and end of each 6-issue block.
Yeah, I mean, as you would hope so. I mean, there is, though it is also meant to be read as one cohesive whole, and make some kind of sense if you're Chris Claremont, writing this
I
down.
think this book, the plot is not that complicated.
Okay.
The plot has a lot going on because the X-Men is big. So if you want to do the last story about the X-Men as a concept, you have to deal with 100 characters. And that means that Chris Claremont does have his hands full. Because
The faces I'm making.
well, let's start with book 1, because book 1 does Chris Claremont a favor by spending 6 issues systemically murdering all the X-Men he's not interested in writing about for the other 12 issues.
Right. And I think of the 3 books, this is definitely the messiest.
Yes, I would fully agree that this is the messiest and probably the weakest of the stories, because it all kicks off the first issue, a buck wild way to start this story, because here are the X-Men characters that appear in the first issue. The members of the team, the X-Men. Phoenix.
Right.
Nightcrawler on the very last page.
Mm-hmm.
End of list.
And in between there, we get introduced to Deathbird and Bishop's daughter, Aaliyah. We have the return of...
let's talk about Aaliyah Bishop for 1 second.
Yes.
The main character of this, if there is a main character, even though Chris Claremont forgets about her for issues at a time.
Yes.
Chris Claremont did not invent Bishop, but obviously does have a soft spot, like thinks Bishop was a good addition to the roster. Has used him very frequently.
Yep.
Chris Claremont did invent Deathbird and also had a soft spot for her. Chris Claremont absolutely did not invent Bishop and Deathbird being in a relationship. And I do find a bit of a delight that he was like, okay, who am I pairing off with everybody? Bishop and Deathbird can get married, and then their daughter can be the rightful heir of the Shi'ar throne. A story that Claremont did like 4 different times with multiple different characters.
We should probably, I didn't think we were going to get into this early, but we really should get into the fact that because this is written when it's written, it originally what I thought we were going to be reading about was some far off future thing. This is not that. This story is set 15 years after the current continuity of what's going on in the books of 2000 and 2004.
After Grant Morrison has finished
and
their
Chuck
X-Men.
Austin. And Chuck Austin.
Chuck Austin's still going for a bit. Chuck Austin still has a bit to go.
But while this is happening, Austin stops and Claremont takes back over Uncanny.
Right, but this is happening 2004. It is happening late Morrison, late Austin, end of Dream X-Men era.
So we're getting a straight up sequel to all of that continuity. Like, it's not forward thinking as in the end of New X-Men, right? It's not like we're going to jump 1,000 years.
We're not doing
a
Days of Future Past, a Here Comes Tomorrow.
No, we are doing, this is a straight up sequel. So he's looking at all of this stuff that has happened and he's building off of it. So we do get,
which I am
baffled by,
fascinated. I love that, actually. I love Chris Claremont sitting there and being like, yeah, Grant, I've read your comics. Here's what I would do with this. He's like, he is taking what Grant Morrison is doing. And there are so many creators who refuse to do this. You see this with Morrison's X-Men for the longest time. No one wants to go back and touch anything like that. You see that constantly with Morrison's DC work, that Morrison will introduce an idea and it'll take years for anyone else to be brave enough to touch it. And I really do respect that Chris Claremont walks in there and he says, I'm Chris Claremont. I'm going to do whatever I feel like with the X-Men. If you have given me a new toy, I will play with this toy. I'm fascinated by it. Does it work? We'll get there by the end. We will talk about does it work.
Well, this first book absolutely does not work. It is rapid fire, introducing everything that he possibly can from the canon. So we get the return of Jean Grey, who's apparently been dead since New X-Men. We get Sinister has been working secretly all along with Tullamore Vogue and the interdimensional slavers. We have,
honestly, I buy that. That's like, okay, I get where you're coming from with this.
And he's angry because the slavers promised him Jean Grey's genetic material and they went back on that promise, I guess.
The slavers do have as their hounds right now, Slipstream, who the surfboard riding guy, who Claremont invented and then seemingly just hates in this story, which is great. Siren and Multiple Man are there, as is Nocturne, aka TJ Wagner, aka
from the Exiles, right?
Yes, because she's very explicitly not just like Kurt's kid. She is a different TJ.
Yep.
Because Kurt already has a kid named TJ. This is a different version of Exiles Nocturne who's in this, because Exiles was also an ongoing book at the time, and Nocturne was fairly popular. It's great that Claremont's like, everything counts. Everything that's being published right now counts.
Yes, especially if he wrote some of it. We get
Absolutely,
introduced
because Vargas is here, baby.
We get introduced to the idea of Jubilee being a film director who has made Nightcrawler into a movie star. We get the Cecilia Ray's Beast relationship. They're like kind of like commune hippies who
Everyone
run a medical clinic.
That honestly, that makes sense to me too. I'd buy that as well.
They are both doctors, I guess.
Everyone has so many kids.
Everyone has so
a
many
good
kids.
Catholic family is kind of a beautiful thing here. Rogue and Gambit have many kids. Scott and Emma have many kids.
God help you if you can tell any of them apart or even could sustain what their names are.
Do not know a single one of their names. I will
Nope.
cop to that.
No. And, like you'd be forgiven if you were confused when Scott glances over at his brother Havoc in some sort of crystal castle, waving with some children and going, wait, what's going on? Are they alive?
Oh.
Are they dead?
No, they're dead.
They're dead. But
Carter, the small terrible child from Chuck Austin's X-Men, is dealing with the trauma of his mother and Havoc dying and has made his own thing.
Yep, and
it rules.
The other kids can. No, it does not roll. The other kids can hang in it, and Cable is off fighting terrorists in the Hindu Kush. With
Claremont loves himself some Hindu Kush. That's not a euphemism. He just really enjoys that location.
Yes, and he's with Irene, right? His reporter friend.
Irene Merriweather, his reporter friend, who we find out Claremont's idea was actually she was possessed by Apocalypse the whole time and his vassal, and then Apocalypse immediately dies after we find this out. Chris, what are you doing?
The fourth issue of the first arc is just baffling. It involves X-Force getting into a fight with
the Marauders,
who involve a shape changer who's in Storm's Extreme X-Men costume. Domino is
right.
possessed.
That's Shaitan from Extreme X-Men. That was an ongoing concern.
I understand that, but
she was the lieutenant of Khan. Don't you remember your Extreme X-Men?
Irene is Apocalypse for one page before he's killed. Cable and several other of the members of X-Force are turned into Technarchy.
That's by Technarchs. Technarchs, right? From Chris Claremont's Heroes Reborn: Doom #1.
No.
Most of the Marauders you don't recognize, except for Shaitan, are from Chris Claremont's Heroes Reborn: Doom #1. And
this final two issues of this first arc culminates with an attack on the X-Mansion by the reveal of this trio, who then turns out, again, not to be this trio.
The reveal rules. The reveal, I hooted and hollered because I had forgotten. I was like, I don't remember this happening, but I'm very excited about it.
I'm glad somebody was.
Oh, Adam, you're telling me that the idea that Strife, Tyler Dayspring, and Madeline Pryor destroying the X-Mansion wasn't enough for you to like rip off your shirt and go like, oh yeah, let's go, baby. This is what I love in comics.
Okay, that's fine. First of all, it makes no damn sense, but
I'm not saying it does.
But it's revealed very, very quickly that these characters, along with others like Ahab, who are attacking various members of the X-Men, are not who they say they are.
Except for Madeline, who absolutely is.
Hold on, we'll get to Madeline because that's freaking ridiculous. I really have to hold myself off from cursing here. They're War Scrolls. And
you remember the War Scrolls from, as we have so elegantly put it, those stories around Uncanny X-Men 275?
And the X-Mansion is destroyed, but not before we learn that not only is Madeline Pryor actually Madeline Pryor, but she overhears Scott Summers giving some sort of loving testimony to his long dead ex-wife, Madeline Pryor, aloud for some reason. And she assumes the identity of the now dead Dust.
Dust tries to attack her. Madeline stops her and then takes Dust's clothes and is hiding in the background as Dust for the rest of this miniseries.
I'm speechless. Like, Claremont is on like peak Claremont juice here, man. Every single character is not the character that they say they are. They are someone or something else. And in such rapid succession, it boggles the brain. You're
saying all of these things that I agree with, but I feel like you're saying them in a negative connotation, Adam.
Zach, it's terrible. Every new page has like this mishmash of not only his tropes, but also like all of his greatest mistakes and worst inventions. And it's like, we're supposed to be like, yay, this is what the hell is going on? And by the last page, when we realize that Professor X is still in Genosha with Magneto and tentacle-armed Callisto, I see we're
in continuity at this time as Claremont was writing Excalibur Volume 3.
Like, of course they're not still there. Why does Callisto still have tentacle arms, Chris?
Because she likes them.
And of course, the last page also starts to show off Jean Grey's wonderful new back tattoos, which are going to become very, very important later on.
Jean Grey does have back tattoos. Yeah. An idea that Chris Claremont would later use for Rachel.
Yeah.
It's great.
Testing stuff. It's not great.
So many X-Men do die. I saw commentary about this. Like, oh man, look at all these X-Men who die. It's really sexist. I'm like, no, Chris Claremont's just killing everybody, folks. There's some great ideas in this. Martha Johnson is Cerebro now.
Martha Johnson is Cerebro. The Cuckoos are the Spikes now.
Whatever. It's a bad name, but Claremont's immediately and like, yeah, this can be a whole Cerebro thing. This is awesome.
Yes.
Everyone gets a good moment. Wolfsbane literally does yell out to tell Danny that I love her before she dies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this book is very unsubtle about Danny and Wolfsbane are soulmates who love each other and who are going to be taken apart forever. Danny has her own weird arc where she does some hella stuff on the side that never really goes anywhere.
Well, we haven't gotten to that part, but she's imprisoned in Mr. Sinister's Neverland.
Neverland, which Neverland's the next arc. We'll get into it.
We'll get into Neverland. Again, all of these things that we are talking about get like 2 pages. So you're just getting 6 issues of these little shots and spurts of things, and you are expected to tie it all together in your mind. And it is like, it's like a very poorly assembled collage of like bad comics that you don't want to go back and read. And it makes an even worse comic. Like this first thing is just so poorly constructed and terrible.
See, I think it's a bad comic that I desperately want to understand. And that's different for me.
Yeah, but
there's bad comics that I never want to touch again. I kind of want to immediately go back and map out how X-Men : The End : Book 1 : Dreamers and Demons works.
I, on the other hand, would like to never see a damn page of this again. And I think part of it also, not aside from the scripting, which I think is just bad, and the ideas, which are also bad.
Ideas are great. The ideas never die.
Yes, let's put Storm in a metal casket and have her float unsupervised in the pool. What? Makes no sense.
That one. Was this exactly at the time? Did this start coming out right when Storm was in rehab during Extreme X-Men? Because I think the timing works out, and that would make a lot of sense. That
sure.
Claremont is just keeping... keeping that going.
It doesn't matter because in the next arc, she's just going to be normal.
She's fine.
And she'll be normal for the rest of the miniseries.
She figures out how to beat being paralyzed because she's Storm.
Yep.
Which is actually, I think, how it worked in Extreme X-Men as well.
But I think we also, because Sean Chen is the artist on all of this, we have to talk about the artwork, which is not good.
Oh yeah, that is a problem with this, and that Sean Chen just is doing Marvel House style of 2004.
You know what? This is gonna. I hope this is not unfair, and I hate making this comparison, given who the person is that I'm going to compare the artwork to, but it feels like EVS fill-in art for New X-Men. That's what it feels like. And
no, it does.
It's bad. It's real bad. The costume designs are bad. The character work is bad. And the page layouts are bad. And the visual storytelling of what is going on here. I'm not familiar with Sean's work, so I'm hoping he has better stuff out there. But it's not helping the already convoluted script at all. So I think we're in agreement that this is the worst of the three, and that it will get at least a modicum better as we go. I mean, our mileage is going to vary, but why don't we try and rank this one and at least get a starting point?
So we rank comics on this list. We've already alluded to it. We rank them from best to worst. The number one story is The House of X Powers of 10. We have 696 stories on this list on our road to 700, which we are rapidly approaching. X-Men Alpha Flight is at 100. X-Force Volume 4, 11 through 15, Us versus Them, is at 200. And number 300 is X-Force 44, Enter the Purple Era. At number 400 is X-Men Kingbreaker. Number 500 is the Five Lights arc of Uncanny X-Men. Number 600 on our list is that arc where Beast joins the Avengers, and then the Draco is at the bottom. Adam, you have something highlighted here at 651, Excalibur 1 through 4, Forging the Sword.
Yes.
Insane to think that this is that bad.
Okay, this is definitely worse than Phoenix War Song and End Song at 646 and 647. I would slot this in between End Song and Excalibur Forging the Sword at 651. I think that's where we're at. This is definitely a 600 story. I cannot fathom putting it ahead of at 600. We have
that Time Beast joins the Avengers.
Time Beast joins the team. It's just, there's no way. I mean, come on.
You think that this is, here's what I'll say.
It's not better than Revolutions at 613. You have X-Men Forever highlighted.
I do have X-Men Forever 1 through 5 highlighted.
X-Men Forever, give him a damn Eisner compared to this. Like, that is at least coherent. This is nonsense.
Is X-Men Forever 1 through 5 coherent?
Compared to this, Zach. And we are going to go up. I promise you. But this first arc is absolute garbage. It is this terrible. And it's not doing any of the things that you like that we're going to talk about in the other two.
This is true. Do you really think that this is worse than the Mutant X Goblin Force arc that went on for far too long?
Yes, absolutely. That at least has some fun art and like some cool character design. Like I'm on board for the first couple of issues of Mutant X and Madeline craziness. At least Madeline isn't dressing up like dust in that one.
Yet. That one's.
I am right.
I understand that it is inappropriate for her to dress up in Dust's clothes. Madeline Pryor is a bad person, so this makes sense that she would do this as a thing.
It makes no sense.
Here's what I will say.
She would never.
Maddie absolutely would. You're insane.
She would, and she would take. Well, I'm not going to get into this because that didn't happen in this arc. Let's stick to the arc, Adam. Stick to the arc and not how she changes her dialect. Okay, go ahead.
Maddie's doing it best. I would say let's split War Song and End Song because I think this is better than End Song.
All right, I will give it to you. So this is going to be our new 647. The X-Men The end. Stanley presents.
Stanley presents X-Men the end book 1
Dreamers
and
Demons.
Demons. Hey, those are not two diametrically opposed facets right there. I do have this problem with the naming of this. It's Heroes and Martyrs. Also, not diametrically opposed. Those often are the same thing. Dreamers and Demons. Not a thing that are like against you. Men and X-Men. That's a wild poll, Chris. That's a weird one.
It's very strange. And each issue also has its own subtitle too. So, man,
my favorite of all of them does happen in this arc that we were just talking about, which is the full title of number 2, which is Stanley presents X-Men the end book 1 Dreamers and Demons Omen's Importance. Number 2.
That happens multiple times. It's absolutely bananas. Like the number of words.
Never
enough words.
Never change, Christopher. Some people think we hate Chris Claremont, and I think that's a wild choice.
He provides us with many gifts, doesn't he?
We wouldn't be here. I do have a signed Battle of the Atom sticker from Chris Claremont after I fought with him for a while.
Listen, Papa Chris, we love
Papa.
You. Your work is fundamental. X-Men the End is trash.
Let's talk about the second part.
Yeah,
we spent long.
Wow, we spent a half an hour talking about this. Okay, so the second book begins...
We didn't even mention how Kitty's running for mayor of New York against the racist girl from Mechanics.
Yes. Oh my God. More Claremont polls. Okay, so X-Mansion is blown up.
It's so 2004. I love it. I love how he just said, let's assume that we're telling the seminal stories for these characters in 2004.
It feels very much of its time, which means it's bad. So the X-Mansion is blown up. There's a big crater there. And
X-shaped. The crater. Well, no, it starts with the mansion being blown up X-shaped. And then it gets blown up even more Akira style.
We learned that Gambit has abducted all of the LeBeau Rogue children and all of the Summers Frost children and brought them to Sinister, but we're not sure why.
Mr. Sinister called in his marker finally.
Yes. Northstar dies.
Northstar dies, and that's not notable because a lot of people dies, in so much that it was the third time Northstar died in a given month. And he was
Right.
Marvel's pretty much only gay character at the time.
Yeah, we've mentioned this.
Not great. We've had to mention it each time it happens
Yeah.
because it is just all 3 of these books were edited through different offices, which is why this happened. And 2 of them were alternate universes, so they didn't think about it. But yeah, it all happens the same month. It's wild.
So War Scrolls continue to impersonate various members of the X-Men, like Domino, and they continue their attack. And we didn't mention this in the first part because there was just so much going on there. There's
much going on.
Also a subplot happening with the Shi'ar, who become very vital to this story because Lalandra may or may not be behind this attack. She has a new, what is he? The Chancellor that is, who we learn will have a secret identity. And that, do we want to spoil that
reveal
now?
his secret identity?
Yeah, let's just say it. Who is it?
I have to remember his name because
it's Khan.
No, wait. Yeah, it is Khan. I'm sorry. I got Khan and Vargas mixed up. It's Khan from Extreme X-Men. It's Khan, the multidimensional warlord Khan. It's weird. Like, you have Aaliyah Bishop and Phoenix and Nightcrawler in Binary, who is now the Starjammer's ship.
Yeah.
Like, fully, after destroying the Brood, after sacrificing her body to destroy the Brood.
Even though she then finds out that the Brood is still alive and has
that's
advanced.
because the Slavers took the Brood from an alternate dimension and brought them into our dimension.
Right.
And then one of those Brood infected Aaliyah Bishop after the Brood had already made a deal with Khan and the Shi'ar. And even though we say it's Khan and the Shi'ar, it's actually our secret third special villain, which we haven't mentioned yet and we're saving.
Let's let's save that because I know that's what you're most
We're saving.
excited about.
Thank you. Yes, you have now understood why I'm like.
Oh,
by the
I know
end of this,
why.
I'm full speed ahead.
I understand completely. So we have, all this stuff happening with Aaliyah and Jean Grey, Binary and Nightcrawler. They're all trying to wake up Nocturne on the Starjammer. Kitty is running for mayor, but also trying to dig through Destiny's diaries, which never really comes to much.
Never comes to much. Manoli Weatherall's hanging out, interviewing all the X-Men constantly.
Yep. I think Neil
Manoli's still doing a great job.
Yeah. Neil Conan,
I guess this
makes a quick cameo.
2020. This would have happened just a few years ago if it was 15 years after. Yeah, look, Manoli, Neil, looking great.
Kitty gets hit in the head with a brick during an public appearance, and makes a passionate plea to the public.
One of Kitty's supporters, who's an actual child, does get hate crimed and murdered.
Yeah. Somebody who was just kind of walking around handing out flyers for her. So we've got actual, vicious hate crimes happening as a result of this election, to the point where the debate between her and her opponent, it's some rough stuff.
It is.
Tell me if you think that whole thing fits into this book, because there is that ongoing story throughout all 3 books of Kitty, who eventually at the end will rise in office, and we'll talk about that. But
right.
It does feel like it's very disconnected to all of the other shenanigans that are happening.
It does. I do understand thematically why Chris Claremont has it there. And he makes a point several times, because Kitty wants to go with the X-Men, and he's saying, no, it's equally important that we, if we are going to integrate into this society, and that's what the X books were at this time, about how do we all live together in harmony. It was a very idealistic look. Then it's important that humans can accept mutants. And Kitty Pryde being elected president, or mayor in this case, she becomes president, guys. Sorry for the spoiler. You all knew this probably. That's an important part of this, I feel. I also feel like the fact that Kitty has to break away from the story 4 different times to say, no, you can't come on our fun space mission, means that maybe it's not as well integrated into everything as it should.
No, it does feel very, very distinct. But
Kitty does in this arc very explicitly say, man, I shouldn't have used as many slurs when I was a kid.
Yes, I did appreciate that. And it feels like Claremont going back and apologizing for some of his previous scripts.
It's Claremont in 2005 being like, in retrospect, I shouldn't have done that. I should have found a different way. I should have found a different way to do that in one of the most seminal stories of all time that will always be remembered.
Yeah.
Unfortunate that he apologizes for it in this book that no one
will read. Exactly. All right. Now, I want to make a concession here. Okay. There is one thing that I loved.
I know what you love.
X-Men The End, and it happens in I think it's the 4th issue of the 2nd arc.
It's the part where all of the XSE has all of their biggest dreams being shown to them by something or another. And X-23's is sitting there eating shrimp off of her claws while her husband Phantom X brings her drinks. That's it, right?
No, that was not it. It was
Folks,
not.
That's not me. That's not me doing a bit. This is just textually what's on the page here in a beautiful panel.
Absolute nonsense. No, the absolute nonsense that I loved is that we do get the reveal that Gambit is the 3rd Summers brother, because he is the clone / son of Mr. Sinister, who removes his diamond and goes back to human flesh, Caucasian flesh form. It's like
rules.
I can't
Absolutely
fault
rules.
I have no notes. Chris, good job.
Great. He's like, finally, I'm going to take off this diamond. We're like, the diamond comes off? What's going on with this? By the way, if you're curious how Gambit being a clone / son of Mr. Sinister makes him a Summers brother, it's because Sinister was like, oh yeah, I also took Scott Summers' DNA and threw that into you while we were at it.
Right.
While I was making you, I really liked this guy, so I just threw him in there with some seasoning.
Oh my god.
It rules.
You mentioned the visions of these X-Men living out their fantasies because they are given to them by petrified ladies mastermind. Is that a good way of describing this, that each one of them is a statue that is then working through sinister technology to provide these their
I'm not here to explain Mr. Sinister's whole deal.
Listen,
I
man,
don't know
this
what
is
he
an
was doing with the
example of
ladies'
where
mastermind.
this is where the example of like what is going on in the page does not make any sense. It's like
It's
I
mostly
just love that.
vibes. Hold on. At this point, it is mostly vibes.
Yeah,
You're like, they're doing psychic stuff. That's great. Because the big thing is Rogue, who is being possessed by Emma, kind of. Rogue has touched Emma, so Emma is living through Rogue right now.
right. They're one
so
person.
Emma got hurt,
sort of.
which means Rogue is wearing Emma's clothes, which is fun, especially because and Emma's getting Rogue's tattoos that she definitely had at this time, and everyone remembers Rogue having her full sleeve. Actually, Rogue, go back to that. Great look for you, girl.
There's a lot of tribal tattoos in this series. There really are. It's
That's what Extreme X-Men was all about, baby.
Yeah. We also get the. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say they go and it finds out Gambit was double, triple crossing Sinister or whatever, and does save all the children. Gambit's not an evil guy in this.
Well, this happens after Sinister dresses up like Gambit and then stabs Rogue / Emma in the gut.
That happens.
That's weird. Like, where did he get a second Gambit uniform? I don't know. And then
I don't know.
Immediately after, we learned that Dark Beast. Did I mention Dark Beast is here along with another group of people like Takenouchi?
Dark Beast being here was weird, and Claremont pays that off because we're just thinking, oh, he's just doing some weird Dark Beast being around stuff. That's fine. That's an X-Men character. Nope. It turns out it's Mystique who then immediately stabs Mr. Sinister. Right. Again, so, no notes on this one. That's great.
It's wild. Which means that not only does Rogue die, but Gambit then assumes the role with full costume, including the diamond and the white paint, of Mr. Sinister for our final arc.
Again, perfect. Love it so much. If you've ever wanted to see Mr. Sinister throwing playing cards, X-Men The End has you covered.
So when we're talking about this arc, did we get through everything that's in this arc? Did I miss something? No, that's it, right? It finishes with Kitty crying at her debate because she's learning about what's happening to the rest of the X-Men.
This arc is the whole Sinister storyline, which I do feel like if there was anything in X-Men The End that you could consider padding, it's probably this middle section here. You could probably jump from the first part to the last part with minimal. You could cut the Sinister storyline if you wanted to lose the fun Gambit parts, which
unfortunately is the most fun thing that I'm having while I'm reading this story.
It takes all kinds.
The first couple issues of this arc are again still kind of jumbled nonsense, but it's definitely a lot more readable and coherent than the first one. Is it an enjoyable story? I mean, I had fun with the Sinister nonsense, but that was about it. But that's mainly because I like Mr. Sinister nonsense, and I love Summers Brothers nonsense, and so this is fine.
Does have both of those,
yeah. And it's not as unglued, like it's not jumping around as much as the first one.
It is a much more focused arc, which I can appreciate. It has less to do, but the stuff that it does is fun. You do get Rogue immediately dying, Gambit rejoining the X-Men and saying, and now I am going to leave my children with my mother-in-law, who's a terrorist, and not be with them in their time of need because I need to go do some X-Men stuff.
I just kidnapped all of them and all of their friends, brought them to Mr. Sinister.
So much trauma.
Stuffed them in a glass jar, made them trick the guards to get themselves out, but then their mom is dead. And I'm giving them over to Mystique. Oh my god!
Hey! It was his Gambit.
It
was his Queen's Gambit, and Rogue was his queen.
Oh my god!
And do you know what happens when you do a Queen's Gambit? Sometimes you lose the Queen.
It's really
this is some chess thoughts that Chris is having here.
Oh my god!
Listen, Wife Guy Gambit, great.
Dad guy?
This story,
Not so much.
Gambit's a bad dad, and I don't think anyone is shocked by
Nope,
this.
not arguing.
This is better than the first arc.
Yes, and I would concede we're probably in the 500s, not
We're moving on
600s.
up, moving on up. This is better than the Emma Frost solo series, that first arc.
Yeah, I don't think we're better than Iceman Volume 1, though, at 584.
Probably not.
Yeah. Better than, how do you feel about it compared to Onslaught, X-Force, X-Man at 587?
I'm thinking. Probably exactly on par with that.
Because this is probably better than Nightcrawler Volume 3, 7-12, The Winding Way. I didn't like that very much at all.
This is probably better than Marvel Superheroes 10 and 11, those unpublished issues of Ms. Marvel plus the weird epilogue.
Okay. So you want to slot it in between these?
Yeah, let's put it at our new 588.
Perfect. I think that's a pretty good spot for, it is better than the first arc. I will concede that. Is it good? I don't know about that. But now, of course, we have to get into Volume 3.
Let's talk about some great comic books that Chris Claremont did.
I don't know about great, but certainly,
let's talk about
certainly interesting.
So the War Scrolls, we find out that the Shi'ar definitely sent them. Charles Xavier is not happy about this because his paramour is Lilandra. He was the consort.
Yes.
As we know.
Yeah.
Does Lilandra have a secret child with Charles Xavier that he didn't know about? Absolutely. And Charles Xavier saying here, like, how does this keep happening to me? Listen, he's a bad dad to Legion. At a certain point, it's not his fault that multiple children were hidden from him throughout throughout their lives.
Yes, and this one specifically was hidden because the Shi'ar are still reeling from the events of the arc of New X-Men Imperial, where Cassandra Nova was inside of Charles Xavier's body and almost, basically caused the end of all that is.
We'll get back to that.
We will. But that is why Zavi, not Zandra, Zavi is being hidden from Charles Xavier, supposedly.
So the X-Men have declared war on the Shi'ar Empire.
Yes.
They make contact with Phoenix, who's like, yeah, we'll meet you there. So that's how that happens. What we didn't mention is that Aaliyah Bishop gets infected by the Brood Queen and is now has a brood in her.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That doesn't go where you want it to, unfortunately.
Does not become a brood. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. But anyway, they're heading there. Gambit and some others jump on a different ship to head there, while the rest of the X-Men form a wormhole with the opposing magnetic poles of Polaris and Magneto.
Sure.
To jump into... This is how science works, Adam. I can't argue science. To jump into the Imperium and get into a big old fight with the Imperial Guard, which is great. The strain ends up being too much for them, and Polaris does die, as does Magneto, but Magneto keeps his form together magnetically temporarily to keep fighting this last great fight, which, again, it ruled when Al Ewing did it. It still rules here.
It's a little different. He doesn't have like a giant hole in his body.
He has nothing. His entire body has disintegrated and he has nothing but magnetism.
Yes. I think it's also worth noting that on the Polaris side, Claremont does take a second to acknowledge the passionate relationship that Polaris had with Bobby, and that, that needs to be brought up. Did we also mention that before the battle begins that, the Phoenix allows Wolverine and Jean Grey to go have sex on a imaginary planet somewhere just for funsies for a couple pages?
She's already told Scott to live. Scott live. And him and Emma have a great life with many children. let Wolverine have this one. Even though I do think it's very disrespectful to Wolverine's current wife, Storm. Phoenix's best friend.
Storm in this story.
I think
this is bizarre that Storm does not get anything to do in this story, isn't it?
It is weird that his favorite character is not like shoehorned into. Maybe he could only choose between Storm and Kitty, and he chose Kitty, which makes sense. Though I don't know. Wolverine also gets very little to do in this story.
It's true.
Which is
he's not the star.
It's just an odd choice. I'm fine with us not having a big Wolverine focus on this. It is a weird choice given that he's the star of the X-Men.
Yep.
They all get into a big fight.
Yep. And we also I know you want to get to the big thing. We also get Gambit Sinister leading Technarchs infected Cable and Rachel on their own mission, right?
Yep.
Against the Chancellor, aka Khan, and then we get the big reveal that Lilandra is.
Well, let's start out. We find out that Khan's the bad guy. Gambit blows up Khan. That's great.
Right.
What we find out is that Lilandra did absolutely send the War Scrolls, except for it's not Lilandra anymore. Do you know who it is, Adam? Do you know who it is? Reveal that is so good.
You really want me to say? You want me to say? It's Cassandra Nova.
It's Cassandra Nova, baby.
That's right.
Chris Claremont's like, okay, I love that. I love that we gave a Shadow King that's better than the Shadow King. That's the Shadow King's big problem is Cassandra Nova ate his lunch immediately.
So Cassandra Nova's in this story, and
Cassandra Nova's in this Chris Claremont story from 2006. This is the first person to touch Cassandra Nova that is not Grant Morrison. Immediately, he's like, oh yes, this is obviously Chris Claremont recognizes this is the biggest bad guy for the X-Men now. Perfect.
So the rest of
he does so much work too to tie it back into the status quo. Morrison left Cassandra Nova in. Stuff is here, and she puts Xavier into Stuff and back into the classroom that Morrison left Cassandra Nova in. This is Sean Chen is doing his darndest on this one to he's no Frank Quietly, but he is trying here.
That's why it feels like fill-in art.
It does. I'm not disagreeing. He is trying, and I appreciate that.
So the rest of the X-Men go through the wormhole. There's giant fights. Archangel gets disintegrated in the sky.
There's a lot of great
future
fights.
Past. I don't think any of this is great. You're getting ahead of yourself. And we do get to a point where the Cassandra takes Professor X's body over again, I believe, after we get Aaliyah reuniting with Bishop, her father.
The problem is Aaliyah has the brood, and the brood, after escaping from the slavers, did cut a deal with Cassandra Nova and Khan and that whole cabal to take over this universe. And then the brood was like, well, we are subservient to no one. We are the brood. And anyway, the brood die again. Could have just not had the brood in this one, Chris. I'm going to be real with you.
It's another added thing because we get Aaliyah versus Zavi, so we get Brood versus Cassandra Nova because Cassandra Nova is controlling the boy. We get Madeline Pryor, revealing herself.
Let's talk about Madeline Pryor. Because she's like, Scott, it was me the whole time. And he's like, yeah, I know, Madeline. We were married for a very long time. I recognize you were doing something weird. I just wasn't commenting on it. I feel like you were going to bring it up in your own time. So I was letting you. This is in the middle of all of Scott's best friends dying horribly around.
Well, this comes at a pivotal moment when Cable whips out his scimitar and stabs Cassandra Nova and is getting zapped back by Cassandra Nova. Needs some telepathic, telekinetic reinforcements. So Madeline comes to the rescue only for Cassandra Nova to sick Laura on Madeline Pryor. God, this is convoluted. There's just so much going on.
A lot's happening. It is. I love that
Cable dies.
In the last X-Men story, Chris Claremont's like, but we also need to give Madeline Pryor a moment to redeem herself.
Yeah. Cable dies, and we assume that Jean Grey is going to be like, oh, okay, let me use the powers of Phoenix and bring you back. Only for Cassandra Nova to kill Jean Grey and assume the power of the Phoenix.
Great twist ending. Love it so much. What ends up happening eventually, the Phoenix takes over. They do all this stuff, and Phoenix decides that actually everyone needs to come to some level of understanding and form into what the Phoenix tattoos are, which are, of course, the Tree of Life from the Kabbalah.
You heard that right.
Okay, but thanks to Al Ewing, we have all been made aware of Chris Claremont's original intent that the Phoenix was like tied into Kabbalistic Jewish mysticism. Like that was Claremont was going with that the entire time. And now it's 100% true, and that's where we are now.
I mean, it's what's happening in this story.
It rules.
So,
Listen, if Al Ewing did this, Al Ewing is currently doing this, and we're saying it's great. Is it because Javier Rodriguez is drawing it? Yes.
Is it also?
But also, it's great otherwise.
It's also probably a lot better written than anything that we're seeing on the page here, because this kind of crap just pops up and just happens for no reason whatsoever. And instead of Cassandra Nova being battled to the last, she just kind of like decides to hold hands with Professor X so that their faces
because she comes to understanding and balance. She has made it. She has made it to Tifrit in the Tree of Life, where all energy flows.
Yeah, okay.
I'm just saying.
Look, man, I know you're jazzed about this because, like,
I love it. It's a great ending because they also do a modified Tree of Life where the Tree of Life is the Phoenix.
I applaud Chris for incorporating as much Morrison here as he does. I'm not enjoying myself reading any of this.
No, I have now decided that this is good comics at this point. By this ending, I am like, let's go. Actually, this rules as the final ending of all the X-Men, of Cyclops and Storm and all of our friends ascending into the Tree of Life and balance, while Kitty Pryde finally fixes mutant human relationships on Earth.
Well, I was going to say, you might assume that once the X-Men on the blue section of the moon assume the positions in the Tree of Life, that we might get an end of Evangelion situation, and that, you know, there might be a rapture or something. Oh no. 20 years later, Kitty is president and they have a memorial service for all the dead X-Men. So we learn that the intro pages on each of issues 1 through 6 of this last third have been her funeral
speech.
What's the word I'm looking for here? Not
monologue.
Eulogy. Thank you. Okay. I can't help but express how exhausted I was by the time I got to the end of this about all of the Claremont bull. And I feel like this lives as a living document for why the X Office should never allow Chris Claremont into current continuity again to interpret the Krakoan Age.
You and me took incredibly different approaches to this, because I actually saw this as the best piece of evidence that they should let Chris Claremont do something weird. Like give him boundaries, give him his own little circle, but say, Chris, you're tying this to what's going on today in continuity. And let me see what's Chris Claremont's weird take on all this, where he has to play nice with others. I would love to see it, because this is Claremont playing very nice with Morrison's ideas and what Morrison had redefined the X-Men to be, no matter what Chris's personal feelings were. And I think it rules because it's a beautiful synthesis of Morrison and Claremont that you do not get for years and years after this. Like, people won't touch the Morrison stuff. They go back into Astonishing X-Men, which is pretty much just jerking off to Chris Claremont, John Byrne comics for a while. So I really like that we got this going on.
I agree that it is a synthesis. Is it a beautiful synthesis? No, it is not. It is making reference to these things, but it's also trying to pull all the threads together from all of these different things that don't go together. It's like throwing pickles onto peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Like it just
That's X-Men, baby.
No. There have to be like, and I realize what you're suggesting in terms of her Crowan book would be, under a lot more editorial control.
No, we are not letting Chris Claremont just do whatever he wants. He has to have like 3 layers of checks on that first.
There are no checks here. This is just he's making like the ultimate 26 layer sandwich in the kitchen with nobody paying attention, and that's why it tastes bad. It's just all the ingredients out of the fridge, and they don't all make good for a good sandwich. So that's my metaphor. Let's rank this one. I think this is.
I have a ceiling.
Yeah,
hear my ceiling.
Okay, I know you're.
My ceiling is this. This is not better than number 495, Weapon X: The Draft Sauron.
That's a weird pick. Because that's not.
I'm looking at this, and Weapon X: The Draft Sauron is better than this. The Firestar Mini is better than this. Wolverine Enemy of the State's better than this.
Yeah.
All those stories are better than this. I will say it's got mediocre art, and there's a lot going on in it.
I'm looking at what's around this, and I don't really want to argue about it because I don't. I mean, I think you're in the right place on the list, honestly. So
504 is Astonishing X-Men 1-6, The Life of X. I think this is a better comic than that.
Okay. I'm fine with that.
This is better than the Muir Island Saga at 502.
I don't think this is better than Emperor Vulcan at 501.
I can accept that, actually.
Yeah. I can give you the Muir Island Saga, though. So we'll put this in at 502.
Yeah, this is our new 502. It's Stanley Presents, X-Men, The End, Book 3, Men and X-Men.
Whew. You know what's interesting? I feel like my energy level dived as we did this episode, and yours went like pew, skyrocketed.
That's because we are the diametric opposites on the Tree of Life, Adam.
Oh, I don't know, man. You must be on one wing and I'm on the other, apparently, of the Phoenix. So, this was a fun conversation.
Oh wait, we're not talking about Generation Next or Gen Next or Gen Next United.
That was the other thing.
We're not going right into the story about 20 years later, the children of a bunch of the X-Men all grown up.
You mean this wasn't the end, Zach? It was the beginning?
It was the beginning. Hey, when comics say never the end or the beginning at the end, it's great every time. No
question mark? Just a question mark. Oh boy. All right. So
hey, just a question. I know you don't know anything about Generation Next.
I've heard it's
or Generation Next United. Oh, it's bad.
I've heard
I won't even try and defend it. Do you think it has problematic body swaps?
Man, it's a Claremont book. Of course it does.
Oh, buddy, it's got problematic body swaps.
Does it at least have the Shadow King?
I cannot tell you. I don't remember. I want to say yes. Okay.
All right. Just making sure he's true to form.
There is a acceptable Shadow King equivalent at minimum.
Of course. There's always has to be, Oh man, what a ride.
Noah Zedman, thank you so much for this gift that you have given me. I told Adam this would be a fun episode to record, even if we disagreed about it.
And you were right.
Adam, we have 699 stories on our list. Do you know what that means?
That means we're on the road to 700 next week.
Adam, we're on the road to 700 next week. We get to 700 next week. Next week is our Halloween special.
Ooh.
It's going to come out on Halloween. That's the day it comes out. I don't have anything else I want to think. Thanks, Noah. Give me money on Patreon. It goes to literally everyone except for me.
Yep. comicsxf.com. No, patreon.com/comicsxf, Hearts and Minds, Deep Pocketbooks. Am I saying that right?
No.
Folks, you can always follow me
on the NYCC thing. It's fine. I'm not mad at all, Adam.
Well, then I was making
I only say it literally every week to you.
I might be making fun of it now.
How dare you make fun of the muffled speech from Queensryche's opus, Operation Mindcrime, track 1. I remember now.
How dare I? Folks, you can always follow me on Twitter at Arthur Stacy. If you missed the NYCC episode, go back and listen to it. Pretty cool interviews. What else do I got going on? Oh, I've been doing some Andor coverage for the website if you like Star Wars. And like Zack said, we'll be back next week with Halloween. Ooh.
That's right. Next week's Halloween. And until then, folks, this has been Battle of the Atom, and we hope you survived the experience.
Get it!